My name's Andrew Reeve. I'm in the Politics and International Studies Department. I'm a professorial teaching fellow these days. I'm deputy head for learning, teaching and assessment, and I'm director of studies for the Warwick PPE programme, which I helped to create in 2004. And I seem to have been director of studies more years than not since then, but it's very satisfying. I studied PPE myself in Oxford, found it a fabulous experience, but the only philosophy I did really was political philosophy. I had a limited amount of philosophy compared with politics and economics. Our degree allows people to specialise in 2 of the 3 disciplines if they wish, although nobody ever escapes any discipline altogether, because the first year includes all 3 of them, and third year or final year has a genuinely interdisciplinary module that everybody in their third year has to take, so even if they've specialised in 2, they never give up the third. PPE as a degree has 3 disciplines in it. That's multidiscipline. In that sense, it's an extended joint degree. I mean, joint degrees are dealing obviously enough with more than one discipline, but they normally reflect the departmental structure of this university. To have a third is wonderful, but genuine interdisciplinarity requires a bit more than studying more than one discipline. It requires relating the material in the different disciplines together. And I think that's the minimum requirement, a method of relating them together. And the best way to deliver that is often joint teaching. But joint teaching has its own difficulties. So it often turns out to be serial teaching of different disciplines, which isn't quite the same thing, because it's better if you can have 2 people in the room at the same time. Making the connections is the important thing. It's not just thinking about different ways of looking at a subject, it's trying to meld them together somehow, which is testing, actually. So I think it's best done by looking at particular aspects of a subject in different ways. Climate change is another obvious one. Philosophers are interested in normative questions about who should be paying for the damage or who should be paying to put it right. Political scientists are interested in the question of national interests and how they can be brought together to get anything done about it, because it's not just a national issue, obviously. Economists are quite good at thinking about the cost of it and the cost of putting it right, or mitigation. So you can look at things from different points of view, and then if you've got people together, that's the best chance of being able to meld them. My own teaching is in the history of political thought, which I regard as interdisciplinary anyway, as a subject. It's described by one of its exponents as an intellectual no man's land, because it's partly historians, partly political philosophers. It's also partly literary, actually, in some ways. So you need to try and bring these things together to understand ideas in historical context. Alan Ryan, who said it's an intellectual no man's land, he says that the big question he's trying to answer in his magnus opus is how should humans best be governed? So that's a philosophical problem as well as a political science problem. And the historical reaction to it has been different at different times for interesting reasons. I'm not sure that the question about how we should best be governed is ever going to have an answer, but the impact of studying it is to make us realise how difficult it is to answer and why it's difficult to answer, which makes our own attempts to answer it in the present contextualised. And if you do appreciate how difficult it is and how even the best minds have struggled with it and indeed gone wrong, it does help to suggest to you different alternative views of the world that are not, you wouldn't necessarily otherwise think of yourself. I mean, I think it's worth reflecting on what you get from joint degrees and what you get from multidisciplinary degrees and what you get from interdisciplinarity. They're all slightly different, although related. I mean, we have a lot of joint degrees. PPE is only one of them. In a seminar in my module, which is a second year compulsory module, and for those joint degrees, you could find people from modern languages, people from history, people from philosophy, people from economics, people from sociology, and so on and so forth. And it's always good to have a variety of experience in the room. Since it's European political thought, it's also good that quite a few of the students are European rather than UK. And you get something out of the different perspectives that different students can bring to it already. So that's already there with a joint degree. And I think you get something a little bit additional with interdisciplinarity, which is the need to try to synthesise the different perspectives. I mean, when I did PPE, we were taught all these things separately, and there were no assessed essays, so the only time you really had everything brought together was when you had to revise for 8 exams at the end of the degree. And at that point, it's probably the only one at which everything that you're supposed to know about was actually available and almost connected up in your head. So we, in Warwick, tried to do what we called a bridge model and bring the disciplines together. I think it's a bit unreasonable to say to students, well, you make the connections. I think we should help make the connections, both formally and informally. So we're helped in that respect by having a very flourishing PPE society. So it gives the informal opportunities as well as the formal ones.